Before I turn over to the ranking member, I'll discuss a conversation he and I had just this week about ranchers in his district that are fearful to leave their children at home to go into town to buy a gallon of milk because of the folks that are coming across our border. And so I think when you talk about operational control, it needs to be to the point of safety and security that those ranchers in Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, California feel safe to leave their children at home on their property. And with that, I will yield to the ranking member for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, the point you just made is a point I'd like to explore a little further, and my first question is for Ms. Barrick. You know, we talked earlier about the new strategic plan. It's a risk-based plan that was rolled out last May, unfortunately without goals or measurements and evaluation processes, which is problematic to say the least. When I think about border security and how you define it, and it's a very elusive term, I think, as the Chairman just mentioned, that when I hear anecdotally from the ranchers, and I hear from them all the time on conference calls and other ways, that they're unsafe in their home, they don't feel that they can even go to the clothesline without being armed. To me, that's an indication that at least where they live, we don't have a secure border or a border that keeps them safe. So that's one way. But I'm really interested in adding to the anecdotal information by having sound empirical information or data that lets us have both elements of an evaluation. And as we think about this new risk-based strategic plan, I asked you earlier about who should be at the table. I agree, all the stakeholders should be at the table to define that. But what suggestions do you have of ways in which the Department can actually measure success using its new strategic plan, which is a risk-based plan?
You mentioned data. I think that's one point to make up front. Right now, the sectors are collecting data in different ways, so it's very difficult for somebody to come in and look across the sectors and draw conclusions about security along the southwest border because the data is being collected in different ways. So I think that's important, and having DHS try to get a handle on that. Secondly, a part of their strategic plan, we talked about the measures and the goals. Another part of the strategic plan that still has to be implemented is how they're going to leverage stakeholder relationships and how those are going to be developed and supported and related to security along the southwest border. So they still need to define exactly what that needs to look like and how they're going to implement it. So that's going to be really critical as well. And I think the third piece is what you mentioned. They're going to have to make decisions, and obviously this is a policy call as well for the country, on what is security along the border. First of all, define it. To date, CBP, Border Patrol, has been operating under the assumption of whatever resources they have. They're putting them along the border. They're thinking, based on the budget I have, this is what I can do, versus, what's the end state? What ultimately do we want for security along the southwest border? And do that in a risk-based way. And once they've defined that, they need to have measures and collect data in consistent ways so that they can objectively look at to what extent they're achieving that end. Right now, I don't think it's been defined, and they don't have measures, and the data isn't great or consistently collected.
Thank you. I would agree. I've heard that from many different people, that we have from sector to sector different ways of even collecting the same information or same ideas. Let me ask a question now, Governor Gilmore, of you. As we've discussed today, and as you know, there have been numerous occasions where the Department has spent millions of dollars, actually wasted millions of dollars on technology that doesn't achieve the intended security goal. As a former small business owner myself, I, as was mentioned earlier, know that you got to spend your money wisely. You got to put it where it's going to make the most profit if you're in business. And I think the government needs to find ways to do the same. I've heard from a number of small business owners that they've got great ideas, and everyone's got a great idea, but that the problem that they face is how to penetrate the bureaucracy of DHS to even get a hearing or consideration of their idea, particularly as it relates to new innovative ways to secure or to improve security. What's your thinking, Governor, about how we can change that situation or that dynamic so that these good ideas can actually at least get a hearing?
Well, I've never been able to do it. No, Congressman, it really comes, I think, down to administrative and congressional demand that the mission itself be effectively carried out. And then I think there has to be a focus and oversight as to the best way to do that and whether the Department of Homeland Security is implementing it. So to the extent that they go back to to many of the usual suspects in the defense community, the question is, are there better ideas that can in fact be incorporated, and can we find a new methodology to do that other than the general contractor type of approach? As we know, the typical approach of the government, particularly DHS, is to hire a big player. And then the really innovative small business people you're talking about simply become bit players as subcontractors along there. The question is, can we find a way to make sure that we're fully engaging the most innovative small business people as they come up with new and innovative ideas? And that is an administrative approach that I think the Congress could rightly demand.
Thank you, Governor.